It's come up a few times. It's come up recently in my bottom 10 video for subclasses, and people on Patreon think it's a good idea. So let's do a review of the Sword Coast Adventures Guide 4 years later. Stay tuned. What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and let's talk about the Sword Coast Adventures Guide. For those of you who are unaware, I don't blame you because it's a book that a lot of people seem to forget. So I'm going to look in my front cover here, first printing. This is a first printing of it, November of 2015. So let's give you a little background history on the Sword Coast Adventures Guide and Dungeons & Dragons as it happened. So 5th edition came out in 2014. It came out in the latter half. I think the starter set came out over the summer. You know what? In fact, let's fact check myself real quick. So I went and fact checked things. Starter rulebook came out in July of 2014. The Player's Handbook came out in August. Monster Manual came out in November. Dungeon Master's Guide came out in December. Sword Coast Adventures Guide came out in November of 2015. And in between there, we had a couple releases of different adventures. Tyranny of Dragons in 2014. April gave us Princess of the Apocalypse, and September gave us Out of the Abyss. But all three adventure modules I just mentioned were written by third-party companies, not Wizards of the Coast. It seemed like at the time they were going to outsource all of their adventure writing and not bring anything in-house. That's obviously changed with Curse of Strahd and beyond. They're now writing the adventures themselves rather than outsourcing them. But this was the first product we got from Wizards of the Coast since they released the core 3 rulebooks. And honestly, I'm still not really sure how I feel about it, even all this time. After all this time, I had a really good nostalgic relationship with this book, as my What's New in the Sword Coast Adventures Guide book that I released back in 2015 was for a long time the most successful video on my channel. So it was really the thing that got me kicked off and saying, like, man, people actually do care about what I have to put out there and the content that I make. I'm going to keep doing this, and here we are today. It is one of the shortest books in all of 5th edition. It is just like 159 pages with a retail price of $39 US. So there's that. And we didn't really know what we were going to get, so we were just clamoring for any content for 5th edition. So it was exciting to get new stuff and a new book. But some of us were used to 3rd edition, 4th edition, where every couple days it seemed like you'd go to a bookstore and find a new version, a new book, a new source book, a new campaign setting, because they were just churning stuff out. And now, in 2015, we had gotten 3 books total. 2 were adventures that took you from 1 to 15, and then this one at the end of the year. The kind of first half of the book, if I were to look at it here and just try to give you an example real quick. This much of the book right here, I don't know if you guys can see that, this much here, this is just lore on the Forgotten Realms. This last little bit in the back is the player-based options. So if you don't know anything about the Forgotten Realms, then this would be a great book for you. You're planning to run a game in the Forgotten Realms. It'll give you a history, some layout of how the realms work, time-wise, calendar-wise, how magic works, and a bunch of different deities for the realms. It'll also give you towns and cities and things located on the Sword Coast, which is good. I wish there was more adventure hooks and other things included in there, little tidbits and stuff, but it is pretty much just like a dump of the Forgotten Realms Wikipedia kind of page, but for the current year of the Forgotten Realms. And the main thing we really wanted from this, and we wanted it because, is it gave us new races and new classes and a couple new spells. They gave us, again, largely Forgotten Realms-based things. We got a couple of Underdark races in the Durgar Dwarves and the Svirfneblin Gnomes. Those are really good. You know, I don't know anybody that actually played a Durgar Dwarf because the sunlight sensitivity seems like it is really, at least in my opinion, having never played a sunlight-sensitive character in 5th edition, that it is a severe detriment. So if you did play a Durgar or some other sunlight sensitivity-based race, I'd really like to know in the comments down below what your thoughts were on it. Have you, that now that you've played it or are currently playing it, are you sad you made that choice? Are you glad you made that choice? Did it really impact you to a point where it was almost unplayable? I want to know. Svirfneblin also introduced the first racial-based feat in the Svirfneblin magic feat, which was published in this book in a sidebar, which again, easy to miss. We had the Ghostwise Halfling, which was also easy to miss because it's just a sidebar. And then more importantly, I'd say the variant races and the half-elf variants and the tiefling variants. Right, so half-elves could choose their type of heritage, their elven heritage, and swap out their 2 skill proficiencies for maybe a swim speed if it's aquatic elf, or a cantrip if it's a high elf. And then the tiefling gave us the option of a feral tiefling, dropping the +2 charisma for a +2 dex, so +2 dex, +1 intelligence, swapping out certain spells like, say, Burning Hands for Hellish Rebuke, or ditching spells entirely to gain access to wings and have a 30-foot fly speed all the time without concentration. In the class-based chapter, this also felt very reminiscent of old D&D in that not everybody got something. And 5th edition is very much about inclusion and giving options to players kind of equally across the board. That's why if you look at Xanathar's, there's a minimum of 2, or sorry, a minimum of 1, because the wizard only got 1 subclass. But besides the wizard, a minimum of 2 subclasses, at least for each of the 12 main classes. In this book, we get 1 barbarian subclass, which is bad and needs to be fixed, which is the Battle Rager. I did that. There's recent videos about it. The one thing they did do that I super like was they added the elk and the tiger totem as 2 more totem options for the totem warrior barbarian. So normally you have in the player's handbook bear, wolf, and eagle. This added now elk and tiger to that, raising your total number of spirits to worship to 5. And I think that's a travesty that we haven't gotten anything official as like, oh, here's a new, I don't know, unicorn totem or a dragon totem or whatever, to give us a shark totem, to give us new options that we can mix and match with our existing barbarians. Cleric got the Arcana Cleric, which was interesting in that it was a divine caster, but was like worshipping a god or a wizard god or something like that. So it was a good subclass. It had some good things, but the problem was its channel divinity was based on kind of turning / banishing creatures, and I don't think that comes up too often. But again, if you've had a good experience with an Arcana Domain Cleric using their channel divinity for turning or banishing things, let me know in the comments. Nothing new for druids. Fighters got Purple Dragon Knight. I talked about that before. Monks got Sun Soul Monk, which I've talked about before and was reprinted in Xanathar's. They also got the Long Death Monk, which I really like, a monk that has a focus on death and survival and you know, that kind of a thing. Paladins got Oath of the Crown, which I think was outclassed by Oath of Redemption. That was printed in Xanathar's. Rangers got nothing. Surprise. Rogues got the Mastermind and the Swashbuckler, both of which were reprinted in Xanathar's. Sorcerers got the Storm Sorcery, which was reprinted in Xanathar's. Warlocks got the Undying, which was on my bottom 10 video. And Wizards got the Blade Singer, which I also just did a video on. And we also got the 4 new cantrips in Green Flame Blade, Booming Blade, Lightning Lure, and Sword Burst. No one ever talks about Sword Burst or Lightning Lure because Green Flame Blade and Booming Blade are exceptionally powerful abilities, and they use your regular attack. But they were also only Sorcerer, Warlock, Wizard only, and I feel like some people may not even know what book they came from. They just see them on their digital tool set, so they take them. And that's pretty much it. There was new backgrounds, but backgrounds I'm not really going to go into too much because there's not a ton. They were basically very similar to existing backgrounds in the player's handbook, but with slight twists. So that's a very high-level, quick overview of what the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide was. What are my thoughts on it? One, I think it's way too short. I think 160 pages for $39.95 is a lot, considering, or is not a lot, considering what other books cost and the amount of content you get in them. I think Wizards of the Coast was new at 5th edition. 5th edition was new. It was only maybe 9 months old. Critical Role barely existed at that point. It was only about 9 months old too, which meant like the growth in popularity that we've seen in 5th edition wasn't as high. The Critical Role was popular and it was still growing, but I think about 2 or 3 years ago is really when we started like hearing people and like Forbes and a bunch of other places posting about how Dungeons and Dragons is back and it's super popular and blah, blah, blah. At that point, it was still new, and I think because of that, Wizards was hesitant to do a lot of things, and I feel like that's led to a pseudo power creep in the game, where books that are published in subclasses that are published in Xanathar's vastly outclass the subclasses that were contained in the Sword Coast Adventures Guide, except for the ones that were obviously reprinted because they were in both. And I think Wizards was very keen on this. Let's not release too many books, so let's cut back on the release schedule, and let's try to not make anything overpowered because we're not going to release books so often. So we don't want to give players a ton of options, but we want to make sure we vet them out. And I think possibly at the time in 2015, all of those options were a lot better than they were now when you have so much better options to choose from. They introduced the concept of racially restricted subclasses, which they have since basically removed. They introduced the first ever, like I said, race-based magic feat. That was new. But I think if this book was made nowadays, I think things would be drastically different. I mean, this is in theory, this is a campaign setting book with a bunch of other character stuff added to the end, and you don't even have that much information about the campaign. If I was going to run a campaign in the Sword Coast with just this book, I feel like I'd want more information. So that's something I think it fails on. The subclasses are weak because of the timing of their design. I think the lore, there could be more, because that's, if this book's a campaign setting, make it a true thick campaign setting. And I think a lot of people don't know about it or overlook it because the stuff that was really good in it got reprinted in a later book. So I want to know your thoughts, because that's actually what I'm most interested in. Do you own a copy of the Sword Coast Adventures Guide? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you wish you didn't spend the $40 on it 5 years ago? If you could change things in the Sword Coast Adventures Guide, change any one thing, change a bunch of things, what would you change? Are there stuff in there that you wish got reprinted in newer books? What are the things you want to see reprinted? I want to know. Please leave them in the comments. I'm genuinely interested because I was really struggling through making this video. Fun fact, this is the 4th recording I've made of this, as I've canceled the past ones because I just didn't like the video. And I still don't really know how I feel about it. Like I said, I have some nostalgia with it. In the games I was playing, I had a lot of people play subclasses and races from this book because they were new and fresh. I don't know. I like it. It's nice to have it on my shelf. Would I recommend somebody go buy this as their first supplement when they're in 5th edition outside of the core rulebooks? 100% not. Go get Xanathars. It's way better. Hopefully, Wizards sees this video and takes the time for whenever their next source book is set to come out. They grab some of the stuff in here and reprint it. And they also have missed on a huge opportunity to just release new totem animals for the Totem Warrior Barbarian. They added the eagle and the tiger and the elk in this book. You could add additional spirits for the Totem Warrior, and that's a really easy way to make that class even more versatile and more fun for new people without having to fully redesign the whole base class. So I'd love to see more of that from them in the future. So thank you again to all my patrons on Patreon. They voted that this should be the topic of the next book, or the next video. So thank you to all of them. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. We just broke 30,000 subscribers earlier today, which is wild. And I am going to be doing a Q&A video. So please leave any comments. I'm going to try to record it maybe by the end of this week. I will record basically an hour-long video where I'll just be answering questions that you guys ask to the best of my ability, and however long it takes me to get through as many of those for 1 hour. So please leave comments and questions down below. I'll compile them all into a big list and go through them in a future video. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time.